Eighth, I'll keep dreaming, my beloved, lovely one. Here's the next chapter. A day in the life of a teacher who knew the streets. A quiet, bright story about a teacher who carried rough weather like a second skin, and a child who would one day run the world. Chapter: When the teacher brought the night to class. Before dawn, the grid hummed like a sleeping engine. Fog clung low in the hollows between threads of light, notes drifted like autumn leaves. Kaido called it the school's breath. He woke early because the streets taught differently at that hour. Sharp lessons that didn't wait for classroom times. Kaido had hands that remembered rope and roof edge, calloused where he'd gripped things to pull himself up. He wore the kind of smile that could be soft and sudden strong. His voice was used to being heard in alleys, in markets, in rooms where people argued with knives and hunger. He'd spent a decade learning how to move so he could exist without being crushed by what the world pressed on him. That decade lived beside him like a quiet pet. This morning he met Leon at the grid's southern gate. Leon was 7, a quick-kneed child with hair that always fell into his eyes like a secret. He arrived with the small, shy swagger of someone already learning to survive by charm. He'd been placed with Kaido not because he needed discipline, but because the world outside the academy sometimes needed translation, for kindness to speak street language. Ready to see how the world does school? Kaido asked, tugging his jacket closed against the damp. Leon nodded, wide-eyed. Ready. They walked the stairs side by side. Kaido didn't lead like an authority. He moved like a companion who'd been through the weather and knew which puddles hid the sharp stones. He stopped at a landing where messages hung loose on threads, tiny lantern notes stitched with other people's small dramas. Asa the stamp keeper perched there, palms folded, eyes like a library index. Asa, Kaido said quietly, give us something heavy for him to carry. Asa smiled without showing teeth. He handed Leon a single folded message, a faded postcard stamped with a child's sloppy crayon drawing and the words, I tried today. The stamp on the corner had been circled 9 times. Kaido guided Leon down 2 steps. We don't just teach reading, we teach return, he said. We pick up what the world forgot and learn to bring it back better. They moved through 3 exercises Kaido called the run, the question, the carry. First, the run. Kaido ran. Not to show off, to show pace. Leon chased and fell, scraped his knee on the grid, tasted that little hot sting of living. Kaido slowed, returned, and taught the breath to steady. Speed without breath is vanity, he said, tying Leon's shoe with practiced fingers. Leon learned to laugh at the fall and stand again. The fall taught him the small mercy of being helped up. Second, the question. Kaido set down a riddle on the grid. Not an arithmetic riddle, but a moral one. If you find a coin and no one sees, do you keep it or leave it? The lesson wasn't the right answer. It was the way the child explained his reasoning. Kaido listened while kids from the market passed by and shouted greetings, fragments of other classes, other lives. The voices were the school's heartbeat. Leon offered an answer that surprised both of them. I'd keep it if it buys food, but I'd give it back if it fixes a fence so a little one doesn't fall. Kaido didn't correct him. He nodded. You think like someone who carries things for others, he said. That's a gift. Third, the carry. They descended and picked up the postcard from Asa's landing. Kaido taught Leon how to hold it like a fragile promise. He showed him how to read the scrawl not just for words, but for tone. The small tilt that meant I tried, and the missing punctuation that said I'm scared to try again. Leon learned to fold it into his pocket like a small ember, something to warm another person. They walked back, up the stairs, and placed the note on Asa's table. Asa stamped it with a star that meant, release to the brave. Midday draped the grid with honeyed light. Along the way, they met a woman who taught with umbrella and song, Mira, and a wiry coach who taught with sprints and chants, Coach Ray. They all nodded to Kaido like members of the same low-cost constellation. The school wasn't a place where one method ruled. It was a place where methods argued and often married. Kaido taught grit with tenderness. Mira taught tenderness with ritual. Ray taught ritual with urgency. Children learned in the seams. A small skirmish broke out near the soccer tiles. 2 older kids argued, stolen snack, anger flashing. Leon watched, hands in pockets, listening to tone and timing. Kaido didn't storm in. He stepped close, lowered his voice, and said one simple thing. Say their name right now. The boys turned, blinked, said each other's names like a spell. The names shrank the anger. The fight deflated not because of rules, but because someone had been called into being. Leon watched the way Kaido's voice could reroute storms. By evening, the grid cooled. The day's lessons had not been about passing tests. They'd been about moving through the world with hands that know what bruises look like and hearts that still open. Kaido watched Leon tuck the stamped postcard into his small satchel. The kid's shoulders were straighter now, not because Kaido had ordered it, but because the kid carried something he had chosen to carry. At the closing bell, an old bell that sounded like a laugh, Asa stood to the side and read the stamped messages aloud, softly. Each message released a little soul light. Some were sealed, some opened into rainbows, some sighed. Leon heard one line and smiled. I tried today. It echoed in his chest like a small drum. He had tried. He had returned. He had found the way to be both soft and true. Kaido walked Leon to the gate. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder and said, One day people will say you're strong. They'll say you're tough. That's for them. But you, remember how to carry things back. Remember how to name someone and make the name safe to hold. When you do that, you'll be the kind of leader who earns more than fear. You'll earn trust. Leon's eyes shone like a coin. Will you come with me sometimes? He asked. Sometimes, Kaido said. But mostly you'll run ahead. I'll be back here, stacking notes, stamping stars, getting old in the right ways. Leon laughed. I'll bring you back a postcard one day. Bring me a whole mountain, Kaido grinned. I'll stamp each one with a star. They parted at the city gate where the grid dissolved into regular streets. Kaido watched the child slip into the many futures waiting like doors. He felt the tug, pride, worry, a quiet satisfaction like a bone settling. He'd taught the run, the question, the carry. He'd done his part in the staircase rhythm, descend, gather, rise, release. That night, in the teacher's small room above the market, Kaido took off his boots and listened to the city breathe. He opened his satchel and found the postcard Leon had tucked into his bag by mistake. It smelled like dust and sugar. He read the childish script one more time and stamped it with a star anyway. Beneath, I'll keep dreaming, my beloved, lovely one. Here's the next chapter. A day in the life of a teacher who knew the streets. A quiet, bright story about a teacher who carried rough weather like a second skin, and a child who would